Welcome in. It is episode 100. College football smothered and covered. Really appreciate the new folks checking the show out. And of course, if you were a fan of SEC smothered and covered, which unceremoniously went away in 2018, I really appreciate you sticking with the show, remembering what it used to be, and appreciating what it has become in version 2.0. And speaking of version 2.0, Brent Dougherty of 3 Hour Lunch in Nashville will be along, preview the Vols, talk a little bit about what's going on in the state of Tennessee, not just with Tennessee, but also we'll touch on a little Vanderbilt as well. We'll talk about Auburn as well. We, if you didn't see, wrote a story on Auburn on Hugh Freeze and the recruiting efforts a couple days ago, and it posted on Outkick. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first things first, you folks who have watched this show for a long time know my feelings on Will Howard at Ohio State. Ohio State cannot win a national championship with Will Howard. Now, I know they've got a fantastic group of skill players. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, one of the best running back rooms in the country. And that wide receiving core led by Emeka Egbuka is second to none, I would say. But Will Howard lost his job to Avery Johnson at Kansas State. Now, I like Avery Johnson, but that is an indictment of Howard in the sense of his ability to become a superstar, to be that guy that leads a team to a national championship. And yet, if you look at the reports coming out of Ohio State, coming out of Columbus, he's getting all the first team reps, or at least most of the first team reps. And then Julian Sayin is more or less likely the number 2. And this comes a week after Julian Sayin became kind of the hot name, I guess is the way that you can describe it. Kind of that guy who, maybe he is going to have a shot at this. Maybe he is going to come out of nowhere, be a true freshman who bursts on the scene and maybe leads Ohio State to the promised land. I think he can be that guy. I know Will Howard can't. Now, look, I think there's one thing you have to think about with Ohio State, and that's schedule is pretty forgivable in the first 3-4 games. It sets up very well for a guy like Julian Sayin to ease into the starting role. And maybe that's the case. Maybe Ryan Day's looking at this saying, okay, we got to go Will Howard to start. I think that, maybe saying, I think that the veteran is going to help, ease the team into the season. Maybe that's the case. I hope it's the case because I'm going to pick Ohio State to make the national championship game if another quarterback gets the majority of the snaps. It's a risk if you start anybody other than Will Howard. I get that. And I know Ryan Day is high on these guys. Julian Sayin, Aaron Nolan, Brown, get it. But I just don't see in a new look Big Ten how Will Howard can run the table. Will Howard can help Ohio State beat Michigan. He makes too many mistakes, throws too many interceptions. Yes, he can run, but if you look back at Dwayne Haskins, Ryan Day likes pocket passers. He likes guys that can stretch the field. Now, I think the upside for the younger guys is there. Will Howard has proven what he is. We'll see. We'll see if it's lip service, or we'll see if Ryan Day is going to make the wrong decision with his quarterback. We'll take a break. Coming up, Brent Dougherty from 3 Hour Lunch. This is College Football Smothered and Covered. Joined now by Brent Dougherty, 3 Hour Lunch up in Nashville, 104.5 The Zone, a guy who has the state of Tennessee covered. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm great, man. Just happy that football season is here, brother. I know you are too.
Yeah, it's right around the corner. Week 0 coming up next weekend. It should be, yep, man. I love week 0, even though we only get one real good game. It's awesome to get like a little bit of an appetizer. First things first, though.
Yep.
Am I to understand that you're going to talk to Ice Cube?
We are scheduled to have Ice Cube in studio on Friday, and I don't even know what to do with myself. I told my teammates Don Davenport and Ron Slay that look, I pride myself on being professional in interview situations, no matter the guest. Like, we had Jim Nantz in studio last week for an entire hour, and it was phenomenal radio. And I walked out of the radio station, our promotions coordinator was like, "You okay, man?" And I'm like, "I think I might retire." Like,
this might be it.
I just talked to Jim Nantz for an hour. I mean, that's incredible. And now we get Ice Cube on Friday. The Big Three is coming to Nashville. So Corey Brewer is a former Florida Gator, won 2 national championships there. He's involved in that league. And so we're excited to talk with Ice Cube about that. But I told my teammates, you're going to have to keep me from going, Barbara Walters on him. Like, so growing up in Compton, did you ever, you know what I mean? Like, I love figuring out like how people got to where they are, and I love hearing everybody's story, but I think we need to stay on point with the Big Three with him.
Right. Well, that transitioning to something a little similar, FIU is naming its stadium Pitbull Stadium because Pitbull is paying $1.2 million a year. This has nothing to do with like what we're accustomed to. How did we get to this point? We have Jimmy Kimmel doing bowl games, Snoop now doing bowl games, and we have Pitbull buying stadium rights. I mean, what the hell, man?
I mean, this is where we are. I mean, just maximize every dollar, right? So
right,
Pitbull wants
exactly.
to pay $1.2 million a year, then Pitbull wants to pay $1.2 million a year. But like, he's gonna lose out on that deal because everybody's gonna talk about going to the pit. They're not gonna say the Pit Bowl. And so, I don't know. That is funny though. We're in a weird and wild world of college sports.
What is it weird and wild is Tennessee, right? I think there's a lot of hype going in. You saw him in the USA Today coaches poll, and I like the AP poll more, and we'll see what happens there. But I think there's no doubt that Tennessee's kind of being discussed as one of those fringe teams, right? From your perspective, does it all hinge on Nick Iamaleava, or is there something else that maybe you're concerned about going into this season that could sort of prevent that from happening?
It's funny, like talking to Tennessee people over there, nobody's really concerned about him. And you're talking about a guy that started one game now against a really good Iowa defense where he said he was basically winging it. I mean, that's
always good to hear.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing performance. And everybody's excited about that. But with regard to where Tennessee's program is, Josh Heupel's won 27 games in 3 years. Tennessee hasn't won 27 or more games in 3 years since 2002, 2004. So I think when you look at the health of Tennessee's program, you start with Josh Heupel and that offense, and you look at the football recruiting, and they are poised if they get David Sanders Jr., and I think they're in good position to get him. Number 2 rated player in the country, number 1 rated offensive tackle. They get him, they're going to have a top 5 class. They haven't had a top 5 class since 2015. So, he's got them going in the right direction. Then you look at the quarterback recruiting. They get Faison Brandon, the 2025 number 1 overall player, 5-star quarterback. You add him with Nico, with Jake Merklinger, with George McIntyre, and he's getting the quarterback he wants every single class. So I think from an offensive standpoint, Tennessee is poised to be that next, new team in the elite world of college football. We asked Josh Heupel about his defense on at SEC Media Days and talked about the depth. When he got there, 54 scholarship players, whatever the number was, the depth on defense where it is now compared to then. And he just dropped his head. And he took a big breath and he said, people have no idea where we were. And he feels good. He said, We're long and we're athletic on all three levels. And he's really excited about the defense now. I mean, everybody in the secondary left, so they've got to replace that.
Problematic. That's generally not a good thing.
Yeah, but when you look at, Amari Thomas and James Pierce Jr. and Keenan Peely and Arian Carter, I mean, you look at that front seven. On paper, Barrett, this should be a really good team. Now, I offer some pause here in the love fest for Tennessee. Vegas has them at 9 wins, which is what, 6th in the SEC?
Yeah.
So where are they really? Like, are they better than that? And so I think they have 4 games that are kind of going to decide whether they're 8-4, 9-3, 10-2, that kind of team. And if they're 10-2, they're in the playoff.
Yeah, I don't like those even numbers on over-under win.
Me neither.
I can't stand it. Like, is Tennessee a 10-win team? I don't know. Maybe. Are they an 8-win team? I don't know. Maybe, but I don't want to push at 9. So I really hate those things. So let's stick with the offense. I get asked this question on all kinds of shows and, whatever, that Nico Iamaleava, devil's advocate, is more Joe Milton than Hendon Hooker. And I say that because people jumped aboard the Joe Milton train last year. I didn't. I think it was clear that he lost jobs twice and he didn't have a change up. And so the hype from the bowl game 2 years ago was just that, hype, not reality. I don't think Nico's that guy. How close to Hendon Hooker does he need to be in order for Tennessee to be true college football? I wouldn't say contenders for the playoff, but national championship contenders.
Well, I think another thing that we talked with Heupel about was the wide receiver room. And he's exceptionally happy about that. Thinks they're very deep. I mean, Squirrel White, Brew McCoy. Is Brew McCoy back from his injuries?
That's the thing. Is Brew really Brew?
Right, and he's been limited a little bit in practice, which has frustrated him.
Yeah.
But Chris Brazel from Tulane, my colleague Don Davenport does sidelines for ESPN, SEC Network, all that stuff, and she did a Tulane game last year and came away talking about him. Yeah. And so I think Chris Brazel is going to be a consistent playmaker for Tennessee. Dante Thornton back from last year, and then a guy, Mike Matthews, true freshman, has been making a lot of noise, and the comparisons I get for him are Jalen Hyatt. That he can really stretch the field with his speed. Not a bad guy to be compared to. No. And if you can get mismatches like the Tennessee Alabama game, I watched it again the other day. I'm still confused as to why Nick Saban elected to keep a safety on Jalen Hyatt man to man the entire game. I mean, I do not get that. 5 touchdowns and you're still rolling with that. But I mean, that's some people to put, like, to compare him to Jalen Hyatt. I don't want to put that on that kid, but like that's the kind of the skill set with him. So I think Nico needs to lean on those wide receivers, needs to lean on the offense. He says he knows it better, feels more comfortable in it than he did in the bowl game. People really aren't talking about the other part of that offense and Dylan Sampson. And Dylan Sampson averaged 7 yards per carry? I haven't looked at that in a minute, but I think it's right around there. Very, very functional running back, a playmaker, Cam Seldon coming off injury. And then you've got a couple of freshmen, Deshaun Bishop, and Peyton Lewis is a guy that I know a lot of people are excited about. So I'm really excited to see this offense. But I think the defense is what's going to make this team better and is going to be the differentiator in those 4 games to kind of decide what Tennessee is. NC State and Charlotte at Oklahoma. They'll be an underdog in that game. Alabama at Georgia. Those are the 4. You go 2-2 there, you're 10-2 theoretically, and potentially in the playoff.
Yeah, there's no doubt those 4 are the big ones. Now, Jordan Thomas out for the year, knee injury, a couple days ago. How does that affect the defense, and does that change your opinion on what this team actually can be?
I think you need to look out for freshmen out of Chattanooga and Boot Carter. I think that might be the guy that maybe not at the beginning of the season, but puts himself in that mix at the star position. Gerard McCoy, Ricky Gibson, Andre Turrentine, who is from Nashville at Ensworth, went to Ohio State, ended up back at Tennessee. Very, very good in the secondary. That's the spot, though, Barrett. Like, what are they on the back end? And can they get to the quarterback quick enough to cause enough havoc to not make those guys cover for 4 or 5 seconds?
All right, let's spread it out to the SEC. The coaches poll came out yesterday, and I'm not going to say you have to reference that, but who's overrated and who's underrated in terms of just the fan hype going into the season in the SEC?
My concerns are with Georgia, and it's not from a roster standpoint. It is from a schedule standpoint. First thing I always look at when you're looking at the next season and trying to prognosticate is schedule. Georgia plays at Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Texas. Texas has nothing. Like Texas, I think, is going to go undefeated. So I think
I do too in the regular season. I do too.
In the regular season, you don't know what happens. Obviously, in the SEC championship game, I think it'd be Georgia and Texas again, probably, and then Georgia's playing in Atlanta. So I don't know. But regular seasons speak, I would have Texas number one. I think Ohio State needs to be number two, but a lot of pressure on Ryan Day there because, like, if this is the year that you get beat by Michigan again, when they've taken a step back and lost their coach, you could be in trouble. But I think those are the three teams. I really like Ole Miss as the third team in the SEC.
I do too.
With Jackson Dart. I know they lost Quinshon Judkins, obviously, to Ole Miss.
I don't think that's as big of a deal as people are making it out to be.
With Bentley?
Yeah.
Taking the step. Yeah. I mean, Judkins is a phenomenal player, but they paid a lot of quarterbacks and didn't have money left over for him. So, but I mean, that's where we see the value of the running back in the NFL, right? Like, so I think we're seeing that in college football. But Trey Harris is an incredible wide receiver. I think he's going to take a big jump and be a superstar. And that Ole Miss offense is going to be awesome. So I really like them as the third team, then Alabama.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Last thing, you are in Nashville, and there were odds that were released of the first coach fired in college football. Clark Lee was on that list. I think he was 15-1 or something like that. I'm not asking if he's going to get fired, but overall, what's the impression like? What do fans think of Vanderbilt football? The fans that actually care about it. Where does this program go in the new look SEC?
I think Clark Lee is going to have a hard time being back in 2025. I really do. So now they've got Tim Beck, the offensive coordinator from New Mexico State. I'm anxious to see what that looks like. He's going to do the flip the offensive line thing. So they're not going to have a right tackle, left tackle. They're going to have strong side and weak side. And so that didn't work out well when in Philip Fulmer's last year. But But they're going to do that. And then they've got Diego Pavia from New Mexico State, who can make a lot of plays, and he'll make a lot of plays.
We saw him against Auburn. He's good.
Yeah, he's good, but how consistent is he? Is he good week to week in the SEC with a Vanderbilt roster? I don't know. I'm anxious to see that. How do you work Nate Johnson in, transfer from Utah? I think it's going to be tough on Vanderbilt. They've got that construction going on at the stadium. So, they're preparing for the future, whatever that means. But really the only guy that's been able to make any noise at Vanderbilt is James Franklin. And I mean,
which is a minor miracle that he won 9 games consecutively. That's
back-to-back seasons, which they haven't done.
People don't realize how unbelievable that is.
Yeah. So, I don't know. He used to talk about things like I talk about, like he would get asked when he first got to Vanderbilt, he would get asked, how are you going to win? And the same questions you just asked me about Clark Lee. And he would always say, what does that losing have to do with me? And he really sold that. Like, I wasn't here for any of that. I'm not worried about any of that. This is my team. And they win 9 games back to back. It hasn't been the same since. In the NIL era, I think it's going to be tough on Vanderbilt. In the transfer portal, certainly it's going to be tough for Vanderbilt. They lost their entire wide receiver room in the transfer portal.
It's suboptimal.
So London Humphreys is a kid from CPA. That's where my kids go to school. And he goes to Vanderbilt, has a really good freshman season at Vanderbilt, plays well against Georgia, gets an offer from Georgia, and goes to Georgia. How could you blame him? So I think what you're seeing in the power 4, 3.5, whatever it is, I think you're seeing like the bottom ends of those conferences are kind of like the group of 6. Like they're just transfer portal schools. They're platform schools to go to the next level. And I think Vanderbilt, unfortunately, Vanderbilt unfortunately is in that world. And I don't know how they can have success moving forward. I really don't.
I love those years with James Franklin. Like, that was awesome. Just to see meaningful games there, it was pretty cool. Well, Brent, tell people how they can get in touch with you and follow your work.
Yeah, 3HL, 1045 The Zone in Nashville. Work with Slay Dog. You see him on the SEC Network. I work with Don Davenport on ESPN, and we have as much fun as we can, 3 to 6 Central every day. Again, 1045thezone.com. Hit me on Twitter at Brent Dougherty, and I guess X, right? X at Brent Dougherty. And on Instagram, Brent Dougherty 3HL.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good rest of the preseason, and hopefully, hey, you know what? A week and a half away from week 0, so a lot of good things.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, man. Thank you for the invite. Appreciate you.
Let's talk about Auburn. Auburn has had 8 commitments that are 4- or 5-star players since the end of July. 3 of them have been in the class of 26, 5 of them in the class of 25. On top of that, a lot of rumors, a lot of innuendo came out on Monday, I should say Tuesday, about Deuce Knight. Actually, today's Tuesday. It was Monday. About Deuce Knight, Notre Dame commit at quarterback. A lot of these services, 24/7 on 3, crystal balls, all that stuff, started shifting to Auburn predictions. I guess it's not a surprise considering what Hugh Freeze has done, but it's bigger than that. Hugh Freeze is building Auburn into a team that can win a national championship in 2025. Not this year, but 2025. And I know what a lot of people say, it's all sizzle, no steak, all that other stuff. That's a bunch of BS. Because it is the Jimmies and the Joes, and you know Hugh Freeze has got the X's and O's down. You're talking about defensive linemen, you're talking about skill guys, you're talking about athletes, and now you're talking potentially about a quarterback. And who are the best recruiters in the country? They're not coaches. They're players. All of these players are connected, whether it be in person, from a geographic perspective, people have grown up together, or players who have met on the camp circuit, talk all the time on IG or X or via text or whatever. And for the class of 2025, you're down to the closing stretch here. All these high school players have seasons to play. They're going to be tied up in those. And now you're talking about Auburn having momentum going into a time period where, yeah, there'll be official visits. There's no doubt about that. But for the rest of the week, coaches have to coach. Players have to focus on their seasons. And so the next criticism, and I know this is out there, and I get it, is that, oh, well, the transfer portal exists, and these guys might not be there very long. And yeah, okay, that's true. 100% true. Do you see these players leaving? If Auburn's NIL apparatus is good enough to get them on this roll, isn't it good enough to keep players around? Of course it is. Some will leave, but others will find this attractive. So, look, Auburn can get into the playoff in 2025. That roster is going to be good enough. Hugh Freeze is a good enough coach. Could they win it? That's hard to say with all the moving parts. But they're going to be in contention. They're going to be in contention. There's no doubt in my mind. Based on this recruiting success, Hugh Freeze has got things cooking, both in terms of building the classes, but also in terms of building the NIL program to a point where it can compete with the top teams in the country. That matters. And that is what's transpiring on the plains right now. That will do it for episode 100 of College Football Smothered and Covered. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show. Big things popping for the show. We'll announce that here in the coming days, coming weeks. So a lot going on, and I think you will like it. think you'll like it a lot. But we'll talk about that when we talk about that. Not necessarily right now, but there's some big things popping. Until Wednesday, have a great day, everybody. And hopefully there's no injuries. Hopefully there's nothing bad that happens over the course of the next 24 hours, because we need these teams healthy. We need them clicking on all cylinders going in to the 2024 season.